the back to school webinar with iPads in the classroom with Lisa Johnson and Tanya Avrith. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat below, and the slides are also embedded. This recording will be live and available from now on, so share it with your friends, and we love to hear from you and engage with us. So let's get started. Lisa?
Okay, so when we were working on kind of piecing all of this together, we definitely wanted to give you some apps and some tools to use this year, but we really felt like we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, before you even get into applications and app smashing and like all of these amazing creative things that you can do with these iPads, there's some first steps. And I feel like I was telling, before we started, I've been living and breathing iPads for quite a few years now, and the start of school is always hectic, especially in a one-to-one. So I thought I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about some first steps. So we're going to focus on slide first steps in with iPads in elementary first, because it looks a little bit different than it does in the secondary classroom. So in elementary, we've started the very first year with the Apple Under 13 program, and it's kind of amazing that that's even available right now. So, we had the problem with where we were having class sets, and when you have class sets and, they're already ready to go, it's really difficult for teachers to then add additional applications and things of that nature. So Apple came out with a really great Apple Under 13 program where basically parents will create an Apple ID for their students, and then their students can then log in, and it's kind of like a monitor Apple ID. So if you are working with iPads and elementary, really check out the Apple Under 13 program. All of the information on these slides is actually linked to a lot of our kind of things that we've been going through this year, the Apple Under 13, some kind of best practices. Also, if you're going to be using email with students, which we do, all of our elementary students have email because that's kind of how we get things off of the iPad, in addition to a lot of the things we're going to be talking to you about today. So email and iPad contracts are also available, and just best practices, and what are we going to do with the iPad? In elementary, depending on if you're in primary or intermediate, it might be something like, well, how do we safe handling, and how do we take screenshots, and just all of these different things that they need to do. There's also Mariana is at thebobcatblog.com, and she's put together an iTunes U course called the iPad Revolution, and she actually presented at iPad Summit. I feel like it was iPad Summit San Diego, but it escapes me now. And this was actually her presentation, and it has all of the acceptable use policies and a lot of best practices for elementary. Tanya had put together a lesson plan, I believe. Do you want to speak on that, of the acceptable use?
Yeah, so the way that we sort of work it out at the beginning of the year when we implement any new initiatives is we'll get the students to create their own acceptable use guideline, not like as a policy, because the policy still is something that comes from the district, but each kind of, what we do is we get like the entire grade to sort of participate in the creation of their guidelines. And also we get them to think about what the consequences will be if they don't follow those sort of guidelines. So they kind of come up with, quote unquote, I hate saying rules, but like the procedures or rules of how they're going to be implemented. And we used to sort of hand them out at our district when I was working at together. And we noticed that it wasn't as effective as having the kids actually discuss at the beginning of the year how they were going to implement, and sort of move forward with what was appropriate for them to use with the technology. So we started doing that district-wide for new initiatives, and we saw that it was really effective. And so the way we work it is at the beginning of the year, we'll get the kids to kind of come up with the guidelines themselves as a class. That's the lesson plan that I've put together, is sort of how we guide the discussion. And then what we do is we have leadership committees, the students who sort of sit on these committees with teachers, administration, and even, if possible, parents. And they kind of meet 3 times a year, hopefully about 3 times a year, to address like what's acceptable, what's not, and to revisit the guidelines. So we've seen huge leaps and bounds, like with how the students were using the technology and how they were really adopting it in a more effective way. So I definitely suggest, if you're going to sort of get going with the tech, to get your students to create that. And then what we will do is get the kids to create posters. So like for the elementary students, this works really nicely. Like we'd actually have the kids have these like posters that they'd post all around their class, and you know, I would even like plasticize them and get the kids, like the little ones, to maybe put their hands around it, or the older ones to like write their names. So it becomes kind of like this class contract of what's appropriate, and what's going to kind of govern how they use the technology. Do you want to take it away for high school?
So I did just want to mention one more thing, the iPad bingo too, and I love what you were talking about, because it's very, very true, and I think those are critical conversations to have with students and really allow them to have choice and voice in all of this. So before I leave that page, there is just some iPad bingo information, and the iPad bingo information is actually the same link on the secondary ones. If you'll just slide over to the next slide. On the secondary one, I'll talk a little bit about that as well then. So on the secondary end, we do have iPad bingo, and we started that, especially when we started rolling out the middle schools. It was just something like, okay, yes, we're getting them into the Apple Under 13 program, and they're setting up their email and all of that, and rather than be the want Charlie Brown teacher, we just kind of gave him like a little iPad bingo sheet, and it was like, you know, take a screenshot, you know, and all of these little things. And so it was something that, you know, the kids who were able to do all of these things kind of were often running with, you know, setting up their email and, you know, taking screenshots and, you know, making sure their wireless was on and all these sorts of things. And then it kind of left you, I mean, it's differentiated instruction. It allows them to kind of go on at their own pace, and then we can kind of support all of that. So there's some really great resources out there for iPad bingo, and I just think having anything that hits on all of those technical skills in the first week and getting them kind of out of the way, so you can really focus on creating and working with things, and not like, this is how we crop a photo, like kind of handling all of those within, you know, in a purposeful way, of course, but I think that's really important. So again, our middle school, you know, kind of handled the Apple Under 13. At the middle school level, we've actually looked at an iPad oath, and the reason we did that is when we originally rolled out to 8th grade, we felt like the 7th grade and 6th grade, based on what 8th grade had done in the pilot, we felt like 7th grade and 6th grade needed a little bit more stricter parameters, or just explicit parameters, maybe not even stricter, just explicit. So we kind of have like an iPad oath, and there's really two schools of thoughts on this. It could be one that, well, you know, anything that if you're off task with an iPad, it should be treated the same way as if you're off task, you know, passing notes. I mean, texting, passing notes, it's essentially the same thing. And I mean, I lean towards that idea. That being said, we found that this was really important to have something that not only was communicated to students, but this also went home to parents. And I think we've already kind of addressed that when we were talking about elementary and bringing in parents in this discussion, but it's so vital to include parents in the decision making and how these devices are being used, because many times it's the bond money and it's district money and it's funds that are purchasing these, and we really want to make sure that we're showing parents, you know, what we're doing with them, and that we're, you know, keeping our kids safe, and we're teaching responsible use and all of those things. So while I'm at the high school, we have about 2,700 students, and it's really difficult because there's just one of me. Oh, sorry. So there's just one of me. So doing like these little mini classes and things like that becomes very difficult. So there is an iPad orientation iTunes U course, and that's also for like transfer students that come in. It has like step-by-step directions. It has all of our like loan agreements, how to set up their email, how to set up, you know, their Doc.as, what apps are available for them. And so you can kind of take a look at that if you're trying to think of, oh, where do I start with all of this? And then even based on, and this is going to go right into our one screen of apps, but even based on that, you know, we had a lot of students who don't know what apps we've paid for and what are available for them at secondary, and teachers as well. And so I created kind of a one screen of apps interactive graphic that's actually will take you to a ThingLink version, just to explain, like, these are some of the apps that we have. They're very evergreen in nature. You can use them for all matter of different, you know, content areas, grade levels, creation. And this is what they really do. And so I've kind of created that for students as well. So consider all of these things, you know, the apps, the best practices, and then just kind of keep all of these things in mind as we move on. So I'm going to say slide, and I'll let you continue on now.
So when we sort of start getting going, I think it's really important to consider some kind of critical considerations, and um, I'm sort of referring to critical considerations that we should sort of address when we start like thinking about apps and purchasing of apps, and what are some of the things that like we should be sort of thinking about in terms of like filling up that one screen that we'll talk a bit more about. Um, I know that Lisa sort of mentioned, how we're going to sort of do that and what does that look like when we're purchasing an account, and also from a school perspective, have you set up, VPP, volume purchasing? Are the apps that you're purchasing in-app purchases? Like, do they require, like, does that allow you then to buy them at, because if they're in-app purchases and you can't purchase them through VPP. So there's all these sort of different, things that you need to think about. And you also want to think, like, is it worth the money? Which I'll get to in a moment. But you also, one of the other things that I think is really important, and Michelle Cordy, she says it so well. She talks about the importance of being able to own your content and be able to sort of get what happens on the iPad off the iPad. And she refers to it as like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, you don't want what happens on the iPad to stay on the iPad. And so one of the critical considerations that I really, make sure that I focus on, and I want to thank Michelle Cordy for sort of pointing this out to me, is the importance of being able to export your work on the application to be able to move it somewhere else. Because the worst thing that can, in my mind, that can happen is you have your students create something beautiful and they can no longer get it off. So you want to think, well, if I'm going to invest time and energy in purchasing an application, can I get it out of what I'm using? Or even if I'm paid, I'm not paying for it, and I'm having students invest time and energy on an application. Even if it's free, sometimes I don't think free is always best. I mean, maybe if it's better than nothing, I get that. But if there are opportunities and there's a small amount of money, I'd say there's a few essential apps that are worth spending so that you can take your students' creations and move them away from the application, so that they have ownership and they can move with their work from off the iPad to onto their portfolio, into their Evernote, or onto their Drive, or wherever it is that we're curating that work. You want to be able to get it off. Another thing that you might want to think about is the application cross-platform or device agnostic. Like, we don't want to get caught up on just it being about the iPad. If our students are using an iPad at school, but maybe they're using it just in school and they're not able to take it home, are they going to be able to continue their work when they leave the building? And how will they be able to continue their creations? So we also want to think about that. That's a consideration I think you need to start, thinking about when you're getting your students to use technology, and be it an iPad, be it a Chromebook, be it, an Android device. Can they move their creations into different places? And that's really essential to start considering. Tom Zakor speaks about the importance of using applications that are, as he quotes, evergreen apps. And so an evergreen app is essentially an app that you can use for any subject that you might be teaching. It's not about teaching with about the content. It's not about a math app or teaching Latin with a Latin app. It's about being able to use the application so that the students can be reflective, so that they can create, so that they learn how to be critical consumers of information, so that they learn how to curate their work, so that they're learning, so that they can collaborate. It's really about getting the iPad to allow you to do something. It's really about the learning. So when we're looking at evergreen apps, we're really looking at apps that can be used for any subject, cross the board, for pretty much any grade level as well. Usually, maybe depending on level, but usually that's something that we look at. We also want to make sure that when we're implementing any kind of application, that you kind of think through the logistics of the application itself. Is it really complicated to use? Is there a huge workflow? Meaning, like, is it difficult to move things around on the application, to save work, to open it, to get it, what does that ease of use look like? And is it age appropriate? Because maybe it's not age appropriate. Maybe it's, we have to scaffold the use of it, or we can't just assume that the student necessarily will be able to use it. I mean, they usually are great at figuring it out, but we have to sort of take that into consideration. And last but certainly not least, one of the huge critical considerations, which I know is obviously an issue for lots of us teachers, because a lot of times I don't know about all of you, but I know a lot of stuff comes out of my pocket when I'm a classroom teacher, is cost. And so I know that if I'm going to think about, the cost of investing money into applications, and also for my parents or the school, I want to make sure that whatever I'm purchasing is well worth the 99 cents, the $1.99, the $2.99. So it's almost, sometimes I say, better to start off with looking at it from a free perspective, and then seeing what is worth your money, because I do think that there are a few essential apps, and we're actually going to talk about them today. Any app that I recommend, if I'm going to say it's worth your $3, I genuinely mean it is worth your $3. And so, and I know Lisa will attest to that, because if we recommend anything, it's because we know this is an evergreen app and it's going to work from kindergarten through college. So these are some of the considerations I think we need to sort of think about. Lisa, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that you've done a great job kind of covering those. And I think, I mean, honestly, good job. No, but seriously, I mean, we can't, there's no way to provide an exhaustive list of, best practices and pedagogical practices and, everything, that you could possibly think about when, using iPads in the classroom. And you're going to, kind of start to discover these sort of things as you move forward. But I do think that these are some really essential critical considerations, and students owning their own content and having access to it is really, really key. And so the next apps, and kind of as we move on, we're going to be talking a lot about student creative apps, or apps that allow for student creations.
Slide. So sort of following up on speaking about evergreen apps, one of the critical considerations that I think is I'd say one of the essential elements of EdTech teacher thought as well, is looking at, and this is really thanks to Justin Wright, who wrote this great article that sort of addressed the importance of keeping your screen, when we recommend any applications or in a school, down to one screen of apps. So not getting overly involved with tons of applications. It goes also with the idea of evergreen apps, because the apps that we recommend really should fall into sort of the 4 categories that we sort of always fall back on. And that looks at consumption. So, applications that allow our students to think critically, to investigate deeper, further into information that teach us, that allow us to annotate or to sort of reflect on student work that we're consuming. We also look at creation apps, and that's a huge part of how we learn. So being able to think about what we're learning and be able to get it out and create the content that we're putting out, as opposed to delivering content that our students might just regurgitate on a worksheet, get them to create the idea. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the apps that we recommend for that. We would look at curation apps, so apps that would be able to take some of the reflection and take some of the creations and be able to sort of put them together, so that our students have an avenue or a place to sort of reflect on their work. And connection apps that really allow our students to collaborate, that allow our students to share with the world, that would allow our students to really connect their learning with a broader audience. So these are some of the applications, and we'll sort of address that as we move along, that we really recommend. So they're not, it doesn't have to be a whole lot of them, but just sort of picking out a few that you're sort of focusing on. And I think as an educator, if I was starting out back to school and it was the beginning of the year and I was thinking about, you know, what my year is going to look like, quite frankly, I would feel a lot better starting out with maybe 3 or 4 essential apps than getting caught up and getting, I call it happy, with too many apps. So I think it's something to sort of consider, and it's good practice to move forward, you know, as you're starting your new year. So slide. Oh, so just sort of to tie into like how I envision how you might think about your iPad this year, think about using your iPad to help your students make their thinking visible. I love the work of Ron Richart from the Harvard's Project Zero, and the work that he's done on you know, the Making Thinking Visible and the book that he's written. And I think that, you know, the iPad is a great tool that helps allow our students share their work and share their thinking process in a way that we couldn't necessarily have done maybe 10 or even 15 years ago as easily. And so I think that it's a great opportunity to get our kids to be working on something. It doesn't even have to be digital. Think about meshing the physical and the paper and the board and the blackboard, and then we're actually writing, yes, with paper and taking images. And just think about that camera roll and all the beautiful possibilities that there are just using the camera. It's like amazing. They can be working collaboratively on brainstorming a session, a brainstorming session on a topic in their class, and they can then take their camera out and sort of take images of their writing process. Or, you know, it could be that they're working on something in art and they take images of all of the work as the process of their thinking, and then they take all of that and they are able to curate it maybe and, you know, work through the reflection component of their thinking throughout the entire process. To me, that's the real learning. That's what I want to be able to assess, is their thinking and their process. And so I think the iPad is a tremendous tool to allow for that thinking process to happen. Do you want to add anything to that, Lisa? You're on mute.
I'm good. No, I concur. And I'm excited because I know that while we've kind of front-loaded you with a lot of just like really just good to knows, I'm sure a lot of you have just come to hear also a little bit about app sharing. So we have 10 applications that we are going to kind of walk you through. Some of them are kind of oldies but goodies, but have had some updates over the summer. You know, I kind of live and breathe this stuff, and I'm doing it over the summer and all of that just because I'm a geek, and because honestly, you know, my passion happens to be both my profession and my hobby. So I wanted to kind of let you know about a lot of the things that have kind of happened over the summer and just some cool things that you need to know about applications. So 10 apps, I'm going to do 5 of them, and we'll kind of intersperse between us. So Padlet. If you have used Padlet, it's awesome. We all know it's awesome, and it's a really great tool for formative assessment and also making students, you know, thinking visible. Over the summer, normally they had a free form, and you can kind of see there the free form is where they just put Post-it notes kind of all over the Padlet wall. And then they also had Stream, which is almost like a Today's Meet or a Facebook feed where it just kind of runs. So what's new is they've added a grid option, which is really nice. So it actually is almost like a Pinterest Padlet. Yay, I can see that. But wait, there's more. I feel like I'm selling cars now. So I have been using Padlet for quite a while in a lot of my professional developments to do like KWs, like what do you know about this? What do you want to know? Because it's a great way to, and you can do that in the classroom obviously as well. Mine are now adult learners, but you know, it's the same kind of concept. And so I got this idea to create my own backgrounds in Keynote that were graphic organizers, and I've saved all 13 of them to as images. And so I put them up on Teachers Pay Teachers. They are completely free. It's my first venture there. And they've been very, very well received. So, they're like examples, non-examples, or, what I observe, what I infer. And so there's 13 of them. I did this in the car between my two boys driving to the coast. I was not driving. I was sitting in the back. So they're there for you, but it's just one more way that you can really extend Padlet, because pretty much Padlet, offers its own backgrounds, and they're fun and they're funky and they're cool. But when you are able to add your own graphic organizer backgrounds, it really levels up what you're able to do with students. And so those are there for you. The next one, slide. Yay! The next one is Google Forms. And, yes, okay, again, I'm telling you now, I'm not just talking about Google Forms, talk about Google Forms. Google Forms are awesome. Don't get me wrong, they are. I was opening Google Forms, I don't know, it was like a week ago, and I was like, oh, there's new themes in Google Forms. It makes me so happy. So on the slide, you can see like they have like birthday cats. That's fun. And they actually have one that's like a science lab and things like that. So if you were like really, really bored with some of the Google Forms themes, that's fun. So yes.
Well, now you can even create your own themes.
Oh, yes. Yes. But wait, there's more. So in addition to that, if you're familiar with Batch Geo, and I'm not going to get too heavy into this, but I'm going to talk a little bit about app smashing. And if I lose you during this webinar, then please know that there will be some sort of app smashing awards, Academy Awards, and I will be doing a post on this that will have more specific directions. So just kind of bear with me, but know that it's available. And every time I've done this in a professional development, people are like, oh, it's a little bit of a process. It is a little bit of a process, but please know, or process, depending on where you live. But know that it's amazingly awesome what you can really do with app smashing in Google Forms. So Tammy has an amazing explanation of Batch Geo and Google Forms. So basically what you would do in a Google Form is you would have like students say name, city or state, and then maybe a fact about the city or state. So that's pretty easy in Google Forms. Many of us have created a Google Form. But have we thought about maybe using Croakit, which is an audio tool to allow you to record like a 30-second audio, or Shadow Puppet, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which allows you to create like a narrated slideshow. So rather than just having a fact about the place, maybe they go research a particular region, and then they include a Croakit, which again is just an audio recording, or a Shadow Puppet, which is like a slideshow. And both of those publish to a URL. So once they do, you paste that into the Google form, and you then go to Batch Geo. If I've lost you, it's okay. There will be step directions for this, I promise. And then it actually, if you can see in the lower corner of the slide, it actually builds an entire map. So it throws your Google form on a map, and when you hover over the location, it has all of the information that students have entered about that location, and it actually links out to the Croakit or links out to the, whatever you want to do. So,
oh my God, I love this. Oh my God. Okay, sorry.
So, thank you. It's a little bit of work, but I showed this to my history teachers and my geography teachers in high school, and they were like, this is awesome. I mean, and again, they knew, like, okay, this is going to be a few steps, but most people are familiar with creating a Google form. It's just the way that you create the Google form, and then basically you paste, because a Google form will basically dump everything into a spreadsheet. So you literally copy and paste the spreadsheet into Batch Geo's site, and it basically has some sort of script that it runs with maps, and it dumps everything on a map. You can save the map, you can embed the map. It's super awesome. You can kick it back to students, create a QR code for the map. I'm going to get like down the rabbit hole with Google Forms and Batch Geo, but it's super, super, super awesome. And it really shows you what you can do, talking about like leveling up and SAMR and what you can really do to kind of kick those applications up a notch. So enough about that. Slide, Shadow Puppet. So if you are familiar with, next slide. Yeah, there we go. If you're familiar with the application, so those first two, just before I get into this, those first two are web applications. So Google Forms and Padlet are both web applications that just work really nicely with an iPad. So if you're sitting here and you're like, well, I only have 3 iPads in my classroom, or I only have, this, then the good news is you can use those on any device, and you can achieve those activities on any device. So Shadow Puppet is a free educational app. They have a normal version that I believe costs money. It had started out free and then it cost money, and I knew it was going to be that way because it's really an excellent app. And if you have primary or elementary students, this is a great app for them because it's so user-friendly. And, handing over iMovie sometimes to a primary student is a lot. Even handing over Explain Everything, which I love, to a primary student, and just it's a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that, but this is very simple. It's, add your photos, begin speaking over your photos, and it creates a video. You have the option to either share with a URL, which is really good for like that Google form, or if you want to put it on a thing link, or you want to do something with it. But you also have the option to save to your camera roll. And there is an example. I don't know. Can we pop over that Washington, D.C. example real quickly and listen to like 10 seconds of it? And what this is our trip to Washington, D.C., and we took photos. Oh, there it is. I don't know if you can hear that or not.
White House is awesome because the president lives in it. The subway was cool because I was in this awesome subway train and I didn't need to wear a seatbelt.
Okay, you get the idea.
To stand.
So that's Shadow Puppet. It's super simple. They upload their photos and then they just speak over them. And that's the one that we did in Washington. And I would definitely, if you're dealing with primary students, have them storyboard this first and like write everything out and then read it. And honestly, like I had to sit there with him too because it's hard with a primary age. My son's in 2nd grade. It's hard to do that with a primary age student where like they're both tapping record and reading off a page and things like that. So I would suggest maybe doing something like this in pairs and kind of helping them out with that. One other thing I have to tell you about Shadow Puppet before we get into Chatterpix is I opened up the iPad version. I did not even know this. It has a full image search of maps and famous landmarks and Library of Congress and the British Library and NASA. And it has like all of these like within the application. So if they were doing research, all of the images are already there for you. And wait, everybody, it's free. Okay, that's my spiel on Shadow Puppet. It's a really excellent tool, and you're gonna love it and fall in love with it. And slide Chatterpix.
Oh God, I love Shadow Puppet. I can't wait to do that with my daughter. Here's another one that I think is fantastic, especially for the primary students, and I think the older ones as well get a kick out of it. It's actually quite straightforward and simple. It's a free app. It's called Chatterpix. And what it does is it turns, you can take a picture essentially of anything and turn that anything into a talking anything. So you can get your students or your own kids to turn objects and have them speak. So I've seen students use it to sort of tell small little stories. It allows you to record in about 30 seconds of recording, and you can add stickers or frames. And what I love about it is it saves your movie to your camera roll. So then you can essentially take it from your camera roll and put it pretty much anywhere. So I also love it because for the little ones, like I know personally, I love having my students create work and sharing it with a larger audience, and I do respect the fact that they're still little, and for a lot of parents, and I completely can understand this because I would probably feel the same way, I don't necessarily always want my daughter's face to be everywhere. I want her name out there. That's just how I sort of see it, but I don't necessarily want her name and her face together. So I love Chatterpix because I'm able to then have her voice out there, have her reflecting on work, but it doesn't necessarily have to come from her face doing it. So she could, take a picture of a piece of artwork that she's created, and we can make a little slit in it, and I can have her speaking through 30 seconds of her thinking process of creating that particular piece of artwork. Or I've actually had her turn worksheets. I know, right? I've had her turn worksheets into Chatterpixes, is that the plural? And have her sort of describe what she was learning. I know that sounds insane, but I've had her do it because I'm crazy like that. But I want to actually show a really neat example of an app smash between Face on Coins, which is another free application that you can essentially turn any coin, and there's also Face on Stamps that's also free. There's these cute little apps that allow you to put your any kind of face on the particular coin or stamp, and use that with Chatterpix to create a bit more of an interesting product. And I have to thank Sam Mora for this wonderful example. Thank you, Sam. Okay, so Kate, can you show that one?
President of the United States. I was very
Yeah. Hold on one moment as we switch screens to that. There we go.
I'm John Adams, the second President of the United States. I was very important during the founding of our country. I should be on a coin just like Washington and Jefferson.
I love that. I think that that was Sam's son who voiced that over. I thought that was quite cute. But that's just one example of how you can have and picture your students being able to think through a historical moment. So it's a dynamics app that then can be placed in other apps to do even more dynamic things, which leads us into our next slide. And so I have a little pressure, I must say, because the actual creator of Explain Everything is watching right now, and he's in the chat room. So I feel an immense amount of stress because our friend Rashawn Richards, who we love so very much, is watching us. And I said to him, we will do you justice. So I made sure to speak with Rashawn. And actually, I have a little challenge for the people watching, because we have three actual, there's Rashawn, aw. We have three promo codes that Rashawn has graciously given us to hand out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give out those three to the people who either tweet the most using hashtag #ETTiPad. And we're also going to send out a promo code to anyone who shares their very favorite example of using Explain Everything with their students to hashtag #ETTiPad. So if you're watching and you would like to have an opportunity to win another example, or someone for your colleague, or not an example, another, please feel free to do it. So we're going to challenge you now. So I'm going to get going because I think Explain Everything deserves the time that we're going to give it. So Explain Everything is basically an app. It's $2.99, but when I say it's worth your $2.99, I'm not joking. It is worth every penny of that $2.99 that you will spend. It is a must-have. It is one of the #1 apps that I always recommend, and not just because I'm good friends with Rashawn, but because Rashawn is an educator who created this for students to allow them to literally explain everything, and that is what it does. It is essentially a whiteboard that you can work on that lets you write and work on anything. Oh, oh yes, it's $1.49 with VPP. Thank you, Lisa. You are 100% right. So if I can think of a lot of other things for $1.50 that you are going to waste in your lifetime, and the amount of money that you need to spend on this is you must buy it. So I want to talk a little bit, if you're already using it, which you probably are if you're watching this. There's a few updates that Rashawn helped me sort of work through today. So some of the new updates include accepting more open-in options from other apps. So I love how Rashawn sort of explained the workflow of Explain Everything. Basically, everything is easy in and easy out. You can bring anything in that you want to work on. It could be a slideshow. It could be it could be a picture of a worksheet that you want to dig deeper in. It could be slides from your class that you want to instruct with, and it could come from your Drive. It could come from your Dropbox. It could come from your email. Okay, you can access from your camera roll, and then you can get it out and almost anywhere. I mean, it's a really dynamic app because it really allows you to share easily, and so it's easy in and easy out. There's also an updated inspector tool, so it's much easier now to group and ungroup, and it allows you to keep the tool up so that if you wanted to have infinite copies of something that you were trying to sort of to make copies of, you can now have the option to have infinite copies. So if you're pressing, you will have infinite copies of whatever it is that you're trying to make copies and paste on. You can also export slides now without recording. So you can have slides with no recordings, and this would allow you to show, that would show up in your exported movie for like up to 5, 10, and 15 seconds. So this is really great if you're thinking of doing post-production work. I actually, I wanted to do justice for Rashawn, and I really wanted to, make sure that he, shared some of his ideas of how he saw this app being used. And so I'm actually going to share some quotes from Rashawn. Because I asked him, so what are some of the most frequent ways that you've seen Explain Everything being used? And he spoke about 3 basic ways that, he sort of sees Explain Everything often being used. One is as an interactive tablet, sort of like at that substitution level where you're using Explain Everything as a whiteboard, you're putting your work on it, you can record that, you're using it to sort of explain very basic, things that are going on in class. So, you're using it as that interactive whiteboard or chalkboard. The second way that he sort of explained it was looking at it as getting your students to create like their own lessons or their own tutorials. And so that's sort of like the leveling up of using it. So now you're getting them to sort of demonstrate a level of understanding about a particular topic and putting in your students essentially or in charge of explaining their understanding of topics. So now we're taking that level of learning to that next level. And I love this, and this is how Rashawn sort of explained his favorite way of using Explain Everything. And he spoke about the informal, unpolished captures of understanding. I'm actually quoting him. So that's when students are asked to show their work, and it is recorded as they're doing it so that the teachers would have authentic snippets of their learning where really that static opportunity, like if you were just to explain it, face to face without having those recordings, wouldn't be able to capture those kind of unpolished opportunities to sort of capture student thinking. And I thought that was pretty dynamic. So when we talk about making thinking visible, this is a great tool to allow us to do that. So I'm actually just going to show like a few moments of one of my favorite examples. So that would be example 1 of student work. So Kate's just going to sort of hand it over. I'm going to hand it over to Kate. There we go.
Today we have come into our journey across the solar system with our best pilot, Bruce. We're starting at the sun and going out to all the other planets.
Are we seeing it?
We are currently approaching the
Okay.
sun. It is the center of the solar system. It is a big ball of nuclear explosions called fission. It provides
So that I think that's good. I love this example. I think he might have been what, in grade 4 or 5. I'm not 100% sure. And he's this little boy, and he's talking about the solar system and explaining how he's working his way and his thinking through his understanding of the solar system. Kate, you might want to put the slide back on. So I think what I love about it is at one point you can hear the paper rattling as he's turning the pages. So, it's just so powerful. I get like shivers because you can actually hear this little boy who had created this huge script and had to have done all this research, and he was so proud of this journey through the solar system that he'd created. And what a great moment for him to be able to share that thinking. And just so powerful what he might have, all the thinking and the process of learning that he had to go through in order to explain that process using that tool. So I just thought that's one of my favorite explanations. So I'm going to pass it on because we're actually running we're kind of, we were worried. We thought, oh my gosh, an hour. We have to get through so much. So I'm going to pass it on to Lisa. Go for it, my girl.
So, Rashawn, if you're seeing this is actually in my office at all times. It's a signed copy of Explain Everything like tag, and then me and Rashawn at iPad Summit, which is the first time I had actually gotten to meet him in person. We had spoken on my now dead podcast, Appy Hours for You. I interviewed him and done a bunch of stuff. So, yes, Explain Everything is amazing, well worth the money. Now we're going to kind of toss it over to ThingLink for video. So if you love ThingLink, you will love ThingLink for video. So this is, I don't want to say it's in beta. It's not in beta, but I feel like it's like an early request only sort of scenario right now. Thankfully, they gave me an early request and granted me access to it. So essentially, right now, what you're able to do with ThingLink for video is you would take a YouTube URL and you would paste it into ThingLink for video, and it basically looks like you're looking at the same YouTube video, but as you watch it, you can see kind of here where like you have the little yellow and the blue, and then you have pop-ups. So if you're familiar with ThingLink, I love ThingLink. I'm a huge ThingLink addict, and it's probably, of all the apps, one of my favorites because you're able to essentially put any other app with it. It's like the ultimate app smasher. So ThingLink for video is very similar in that nature. And, it's really interesting to be able to use it. So what I have is when you have that video there, then you click on any part of the video and you create a tag, just like you do in ThingLink. So tags can be text tags where, at 2 minutes it pops up and it, asks a question, or, it gives a little bit more information about atoms and cells. Or it can be a text and a link. And so the beauty of link is, yes, it could take you to a Wikipedia about cells or something like that, but it could also take you to a Google form. It could take you to another student creation. It could take you to a Padlet board. So it's an excellent tool. I've only really graced the surface of it, but I did just publish on Monday an article, a guest post on Free Tech for Teachers. It's called 4 Ways to Transform Student Projects with ThingLink for Video. So yes, you still have to go through YouTube, but you can publish student work to YouTube. So don't just think it's whatever I find on YouTube. It could very well be a student creation or a teacher creation that you're really kind of pushing the boundaries with what you can do with videos. So deconstructed info. So when you're watching a video, many times, like in Explain Everything and certain things like that, we're not quite sure how people achieve the end product. And so this is a really easy way to add tags. Well, here, I took a screenshot of Keynote and then did X, Y, and Z with it. Feedback and peer assessment, I kind of mentioned, adding a Padlet board and a Google form, within a student project so they can receive feedback. And again, this whole information about ThingLink for video, the project you see, there's a video tutorial by Susan. There's a bunch of information on it. So it's all on that Free Tech for Teachers linked off of here. But author's notes, kind of like a director's cut. You know, when they're making certain design choices, then they can have like author's notes and things like that. Right now, it publishes to a URL, and it can be embedded. So that's kind of the shareable aspect of it. It's a really good tool for formative assessment, for flipped classrooms, and I would definitely keep this on your radar as we move forward. So, slide. I feel like I'm talking really quickly. So my last tool, we talked about apps worth spending money, and Book Creator, hands down, is worth every cent. It is $4.99. It is then $2.49 with a VPP. I won't bring up my little yellow Post-it note for that, but it is $2.49 with a VPP. It's totally worth it. There is a free version. You can only create one book, and you can download it just to kind of monkey around with it. But definitely worth this. So a few things to know about it. I don't remember when this update happened, but there is an update. So originally it was just like you're creating a book, and you can, open it in iBooks, or, it's basically a book. If you've seen the IKEA commercial, then you'll appreciate it's a book. If not, go Google that. It's very amusing. So, but with the update, now you can export as a video. So it plays all of the audio, it plays all of the video, all of the nuances of it. It basically just screen captures the whole thing and exports to your photo roll. And so for those of you who don't want to publish automatically to the bookstore, but they just want to have like a video of it, it's a great way. In the interest of time, I don't have time to share these two with you, but the pirate story is the one that my son has started crafting, and I love that he's taken pictures of his own drawings, and he has his own little video. He's dressed up like a pirate. It's his own story. I've done very little other than just kind of help capture it. And then there's one that a very amazing ADE mom, Kathy Yanka, she is Mathy Kathy, and I adore her. We are sisters from another mister. And so her son, her third grade son, has food allergies, and he has developed a book over the summer called All About Food Allergies. And, talk about authentic publishing. It's really, really amazing. So that's there. And then augmented reality, I won't even get into that, but if you're wanting to app smash augmented reality, maybe I need to do like maybe that will be my App Smash Academy Award Part 2. We can talk about that. So there's some examples there. And just know that when iOS 8 comes out, they're about ready to release another update with Book Creator, and they're going to have widgets like quizzes and popovers, and so you're really, really going to want to have this tool. It's amazing. So I'm going to let Tanya kind of take over with it. Am I saying Tanya? That is right?
You got it. You got it. So I'm going to sort of, we don't have much time, so I'll try to sort of run through the next two. But so when we were sort of asked to sort of come up with some of our favorite apps sort of going back to school, and so I recognize that not everyone necessarily has access to Google Apps at their district. So I mean, I'm sure you find workflow solutions, in any situation that you're in. However, I will sort of talk about why I love Google Drive, and why I think it is essential for any sort of collaboration and workflow in my mind when we're working on any device. So first of all, Google Drive is phenomenal because no matter where your students are, they have access to their work. And I think that's incredibly powerful, and I think if we're working in a sort of shared device situation, which is not always necessarily the most ideal situation, if at least your students have access to Google Drive, they're able to get their work off their device. And I know that that's probably the reality in many cases in most schools around the country. Not everyone has the opportunity to be one-to-one. So, just a few things to sort of think of. First of all, in terms of Google Slides, Google Sheets, and Google presentations, they are available on the iPad, and the workflow is a little different, than using it on a desktop. And so I just for the sake of time, I don't unfortunately have enough time to sort of go through that. However, if you look at the bottom of this slide, there's a tutorial for workflow on the iPad, and I'm going to probably have to thank, I think it would probably be Beth or Greg for putting that together, which I've shared over here. Google Drive now just released Google Slides that allow you finally to collaborate. However, they still do not allow you to import any images. So it's pretty limited. It's just text-based. So I think in terms of doing collaborative writing, if you wanted to sort of do some simple sort of writing activities within a class with the iPad, and you wanted to keep it down to small amounts of words to build on a story, if you were to sort of use the Slides app and rethink it, it's pretty dynamic. However, for using it, with to create presentations, I don't highly recommend it quite yet. I also think it's a really great tool to use with other apps that allow you to sort of save to Drive, so that you can either use it for storage or allow you to use it to share. So I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide. So thank you, Greg, for putting these wonderful sort of slides together, talking about how you can think of merging screencasts and projects. And so I love the idea of building these collaborative screencasts. I know that I have a few examples. If you have a look, they're a little earlier when we were talking about Explain Everything, but I think it was Kristen Whedon, right? I think it was Kristen. She put together these, or it could be with Book Creator, but either way, these collaborative projects where students create, parts of a screencast or a book, creator book, and they merge them into Google Drive, and then share that that file with another class. It could be a class from around the world. It could be a class in another city. It could be a class across the country, whatever it is, and you're able to merge those screencasts or books to build on these really wonderful collaborative stories. And I think that's that's really, to me, kind of taking it to the R level. Like when we start thinking about that, we can now collaborate with people from around the world in a way that we never thought we might have been able to. It just sort of takes it to a whole other level. Just to go to the next slide. When you, the same thing goes with, our Book Creator, the idea of merging books. And I know my friend Carolyn Skiba, she created this incredible collaborative book with her third graders in Chicago and a group of third graders from Iceland. And so these kinds of stories now have kind of taken off, and you'll have people that are creating these incredibly powerful collaborative books. I think that really makes the learning really authentic and gives students this amazing audience to work within. So just to go to the next slide. Okay. I'm going to actually just skip over this just for the sake of time, but Google Classroom is a great tool just to sort of let you hand things in now. But one of my favorite blogs, and unfortunately I only have a minute to sort of talk about it, is Easy Blogger in Easy Blog or Easy Blog, and they have Easy Blog Junior. And this is a dynamic tool that allows you to collaborate in a way that is unimaginable. So we're going to sort of unfortunately, we've sort of hit the end, and we're at the end. So I'm going to sort of pass it off to Kate, because we have some amazing announcements to make about upcoming events with EdTech Teacher. So Kate, would you like to sort of finish us off?
Yeah, if I just get back to the slides real quick. So we just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and remind everybody that we have a ton of great resources on our website, and we have some great opportunities coming up. We have the iPad Summit in Boston, in San Diego, and then even in Canada next spring.
In Toronto.
Yeah, and actually today we also announced that Tom DeCord and Justin Reich, our co-founders of EdTech Teacher, launched a new ebook today, iPads in the Classroom. The introduction is available for free on our website right now. on edtechteacher.org, and will be available for purchase in the next 24 to 48 hours, the full version on Kindle, Amazon. So those will be great. And be sure to stay tuned. We have Tech Tip Tuesday coming out on our social media every Tuesday. Today, Greg put together a great one about app smashing. And we're going to have our first year of the App Smash Awards. And so we're encouraging people to submit their own awards. And we're going to announce them during the iPad Summit in Boston, but you don't need to be present to win. We're going to give awards for Best Collaborative, STEM, Storytelling, and all that information is on ettipad.org. So once again, edtechteacher.org and ettipad.org, great resources there for everybody. And thank you, Tanya and Lisa, for joining us. This recording and the slides and the chat transcript are not going anywhere. They will be up on our website and archived for future use. So be sure to check back, share with your colleagues, and we'll see you again soon. Next week, we have Google in the classroom on September 18th. So we'll see you all then. Bye.